Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here. I've really enjoyed the sessions to date. I've really enjoyed seeing all the faces we've been working with these past 2 years. It was 2 years ago, I think we were launched the initiative in 2019. So I'm going to go into some detail here regarding our carbon impacts and what that means, and what that means in terms of what is a carbon efficient way to game. And my colleague, Dr. Aslan, will be joining tomorrow the session to go in some of the detail about how you measure and how you account for carbon. This is focusing on really on one of our areas of contribution and work within the Alliance, but a very pertinent one, particularly if you consider the last presentation and the challenge about what action to take. Okay, so yeah. So I'm pressing a button here to move my slide forward. Good. Right. So basically, for PlayStation 5, we made quite a number of energy efficiency improvements. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about the consoles we have before going into the wider carbon impact. And that really includes efficient chipset, efficient power supplies, and efficient low power modes. And altogether, that means, well, we've estimated that PlayStation 5 consumes, I can't actually see the slide here. Okay, yes. Yeah, basically, for example, in the low power mode, PlayStation 5 consumes about half a watt, that is in the suspend mode where you can resume gameplay. And that's compared to about 1.8 watt on the PlayStation 4. So we do estimate the energy use of PlayStation 5 is less than PS4. 13% is a mistake there, so please ignore that number. But the launch model of PlayStation 5 consumes less energy than the launch model PlayStation 4. And basically, overall, because of these energy efficiency improvements, we estimate that it has avoided emissions of between sort of 32 and 39,000 million tons per console sold per year. Okay, next slide, please. Oh. If there's anybody technical, the button isn't working. Oh, I seem to have a screen lag. Please bear with me, technical issues. Okay, so in terms of PlayStation 4, over the lifetime of PlayStation 4, since it launched in 2013, we've reduced its energy use by about half. I'm really sorry, but I can't see the screen. It's very blurred. I can't see what slide I'm presenting. Right. Okay, let's hope that you're looking at a picture of PlayStation 4 right now. So basically, games played on PS4 games played on the PlayStation 5 will consume about a third less power. And we estimate for PlayStation 4 an avoided I don't know if anyone can help, but everything's out of sequence, so I can't actually see what slide I'm talking about. Okay.
Hi, Kieren. Can you hear
Yes,
me?
sorry about this. I'm struggling to see the sequence of which slide I'm actually you're looking at as I'm speaking. But what we're just trying to show is that the energy use of PlayStation 5 here in all of its various modes is has been reduced certainly versus the launch model of PlayStation 4 due to those energy efficiency improvements. But let me just go into the main presentation. Okay, so yes, we joined Playing for the Planet in September 2019. And basically, President Jim Ryan was there, and he basically announced how we're really proud to be part of this alliance and how we believe gaming has the power to inspire social change. So one of our commitments was to investigate and report upon the carbon footprint of gaming overall, and that's a study we basically completed in 2019, and we shared this methodology with the various members contributing to the carbon work stream. And basically that carbon assessment includes all the various stages of the product life cycle, and that is from production of the discs, production of the consoles. It includes the shipping, the logistics. It includes internet, data centers, data transmission. It includes retail. It includes our warehouse operations. It includes the sales, and it includes consumers driving this product to the home, the use, and the end of life. And basically, when you look at it, there are various ways you can game, and you can ask the question, what is the carbon impact depending upon which game you play? And the answer is it really depends. It depends if you're playing by disc, it depends if you are downloading, or it depends if you're streaming. And furthermore, it really depends which country you reside in. Different countries have different energy mix, have different carbon intensity of their electricity supply. It also depends on file size. So if you're downloading a large game or a small game, it will take up a greater proportion of the internet bandwidth and committed resources. And finally, it depends upon the overall amount of time of which you're playing a game. And surprisingly, when you look at the number of games that consumers buy versus the amount of time they play, games can be played for hundreds of hours, as I'm sure some of you know, compared to a game that you may do a walkthrough during 20 hours or so. So it really depends how long you play that game for. And all these dependencies can be calculated. And what we calculated looking at our data was that the average game time on the PlayStation 4 results in a downloaded game in about 50 grams of carbon dioxide emissions equivalent per hour for the entire life cycle. And that was a study completed 2019, so it's still a couple of years ago now. We're updating that study now. But imagine an average game size about 53 gigabytes at the time. The comparison sort of typical of EU or US electricity supplies. And for this particular scenario, we assume 250 hours of gameplay. So basically, what's interesting about that is if you compare the impact of gaming on a console compared to other forms of entertainment, such as on a gaming PC, gaming PCs tend to be more energy intensive for their purposes. So you could expect a higher energy use on a typical gaming PC. And if you compare that to an activity such as driving to the cinema, where you can have up to sort of, I think it's around sort of, well, it's considerably more energy use, and it's 20 times that amount. And basically, if you look at that, we can break it down in terms of looking at different gaming methods in terms of what is the main contribution to the carbon impact of the gaming cycle. So for disc-based, you look at about half of the impact there being from the use phase, as we've seen. The rest being from manufacture, was probably 2/3 from the use phase, and from distribution. Whereas in download, the impact of use phase is more accentuated because there's on average a lower impact to download than to buy a disc. But streaming, you see a large amount of that energy use and carbon emissions basically goes to the cloud compared to conventional gaming. So again, we need to look in more detail And this is where it gets a little bit technical, but these are the full results. And I'll explain this a little bit because it's worth looking into. So first of all, on the x-axis, you can see this represents the amount of time, the number of hours that a game is played in total. And the y-axis going up on the left there represents the actual carbon emissions itself. And this is a logarithmic scale, so it goes up in sort of orders of magnitude, factors of 10 each point. And if you look at the green line, that represents the carbon impact of cloud gaming. The red line represents the carbon impact of a downloaded game, and the blue represents the impact of a disk-based game. And basically, what you see is very interesting, because if you play a game for, let's say, on average, around a few hours or less, it has a lower carbon impact to stream. And that is because you don't have the embedded or upfront impact of downloading that game or producing the disk. And then after that, after a few hours, what works out better is to download the game and eventually also to buy the disk. The disk has a slightly higher impact than downloading, but over longer periods of gameplay, it's more or less equivalent. So what do we do? Well, at the moment, we have a streaming service called PlayStation Now. It offers a library of 700 games or more to try, and includes the option to download those games if you play it for a longer time. So, this is ideal as a sort of rental model for people that want to try and experience different games. And should they want to play them for longer, the download option is there. So that equates more or less with the lower carbon impact side of the scale. And then what about sort of in terms of comparing disk and download? Well, as I mentioned, if you have a game played for a longer time, then it's better to download or play the disk. And what does that mean overall? Well, downloading games usually is better if you have a smaller file, because that requires less internet bandwidth. And disk and download equate to each other more or less if you play a game end to end. So although I say this, the situation will change. We will develop new technologies. The internet becomes more efficient. So part of our research from Dr. Aslan showed that the internet energy efficiency has sort of doubled. So the energy use of the internet per gigabyte downloaded has sort of halved every 2 years since about the start of the millennium. So all of these factors are moving. And as a good indication, when I first studied this in 2010, it was actually disks had a lower carbon footprint than the download. So we can't ever stand still. We can't ever just assume because we found something today that it's going to be the same tomorrow. So as we see technology evolving, we need to continue to review, continue to measure in order to understand what's driving carbon emissions and in order to mitigate and reduce those emissions. Basically, the way that we're looking at it now is the services provided are more or less optimal in regard to carbon emissions. And if any of you would like to discuss that with me during the next break, I'm going to go to the PlayStation or the Sony Interactive Entertainment booth. We can talk. There's also a video there of some of our player creations. Our players created some games for the Green Game Jam using the game Dreams, and you can see the content that they produced supporting reforestation and ocean protection. Thank you.